The night his son disappeared, the silence inside the mansion screamed louder than any storm. One moment the house was filled with the small footsteps of a laughing child running through long marble halls, and the next moment there was only an empty corridor, a dropped toy car, and a father whose heart shattered in a way no wealth could repair. Security cameras showed shadows, a van that shouldn't have been there, and a door that should never have opened. In a single cruel minute, a powerful businessman who owned half the skyline lost the one thing that truly made him rich, his little boy. From that moment on, the world stopped feeling large and started feeling painfully hollow. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Lonely Dad Strong Heart. Stories like this remind us that hope can survive even the darkest nights. Armin Malik had built his empire from nothing. Years earlier, he had been a young man who worked double shifts, slept in tiny rented rooms, and dreamed of giving his family a better life. Eventually, the dream came true beyond anything he imagined. His company grew into a massive success, his name appeared in magazines, and people called him one of the most successful single fathers in the city after his wife passed away when their son was only 2 years old. But none of the awards or expensive suits mattered to him as much as the evenings when he returned home and saw his small son running toward him with open arms. His boy, Zion, had bright, curious eyes and a laugh that made every stressful day fade away. The kidnapping happened on a quiet evening when the air was calm and the city lights glowed peacefully. Armin had just arrived home from work, carrying a small gift he had bought because Zion had learned how to ride a bicycle without training wheels. The celebration he imagined never happened. Instead, the guards were confused, the house staff panicked, and the security team rushed to review footage with pale faces. Someone had planned this carefully. Someone had studied his routines, watched his house, and waited for the moment when protection seemed strongest but was actually weakest. In the days that followed, Armin's world became a blur of police stations, investigators, and sleepless nights. Money was offered in unimaginable amounts for any clue. Private detectives were hired from different countries. Flyers covered entire neighborhoods. News channels talked about the case for weeks. Yet no ransom call came, no clear lead appeared, and no explanation made sense. It was as if the earth had opened and swallowed the child. The most painful part was the silence that came after the headlines faded. The world moved on, but Armin did not. Every room in the mansion carried memories. The staircase where Zion had once slipped and laughed, the garden where they planted a small tree together, the dining table where the boy used to draw pictures instead of eating properly. Armin found himself walking through these places late at night, touching objects as if they could answer him. People told him to accept reality, but a father's heart does not accept emptiness easily. Instead of giving up, Armin began a search that slowly turned into a mission lasting years. He reduced his business responsibilities and focused on finding even the smallest clue. He visited shelters, orphanages, remote towns, and border areas. Sometimes someone would say they had seen a child who looked similar, and Armin would travel hundreds of miles with hope burning in his chest, only to return with tears he tried to hide. As years passed, his hair began to turn gray, but his determination did not fade. The wealth that once built skyscrapers was now spent on investigators, missing children programs, and technology that could track faces across cities. Many people thought he was chasing a dream that no longer existed. But Armin believed something simple yet powerful. Somewhere in the world, his son was growing up, breathing the same air, living a life that had once belonged to them both. What made the journey harder was guilt. Armin often blamed himself for the security gap that night. In quiet moments he wondered if his focus on work had created enemies or jealousy that led to the crime. These thoughts haunted him, yet every time despair tried to consume him, he remembered Zion's smile, and that memory pushed him forward again. 10 years passed like a slow storm. The mansion became quieter, but Armin transformed it into something meaningful. He started a foundation dedicated to missing children, helping families who were going through the same pain he had faced. For many parents, Armin became a symbol of strength because he understood their suffering deeply. He attended meetings, listened to stories, and funded search operations that police departments sometimes could not afford. Helping others became a way to keep hope alive within himself. Still, every birthday of his son felt like reopening a wound. Armin kept a small room exactly the way it had been on the day Zion disappeared. The toy car remained on a shelf, untouched. The small bed was neatly made, as if waiting for someone to return. Staff members often felt emotional seeing the room, but Armin believed that hope should always have a place to live. 15 years into the search, something changed unexpectedly. A young volunteer working with Armin's foundation discovered a pattern while reviewing old case files and trafficking routes that had once been ignored. It suggested that the kidnapping might not have been random but part of a network that moved children across regions under new identities. The information was incomplete, but it was the first time in years that Armin felt a spark of possibility that seemed real rather than imagined. He followed the lead with quiet intensity. Investigators traveled to different towns, interviewing people who had once been part of that network or who had escaped it. Many leads ended in disappointment, but one detail slowly grew stronger. In a distant town known for its crowded markets and dusty roads, someone remembered a quiet boy who had arrived many years earlier with a group that didn't stay long. The boy had eventually been taken in by a local family who believed he was abandoned. Armin's heart pounded when he heard this. The timeline matched almost perfectly. But after 20 years of searching, he had learned not to trust hope too quickly. Still, he traveled to that town himself. The journey felt surreal, like walking through a dream he had waited decades to enter. The town was simple, nothing like the luxury Armin once lived in every day. Small houses lined narrow streets, children played near roadside stalls, and life moved with a calm rhythm. Somewhere here, perhaps, was the answer he had chased for half his life. When Armin stepped out of the car, the air felt heavy with memories he had not yet confirmed. The investigation there moved slowly. Records were incomplete, and many people had moved away over the years. But eventually, someone pointed toward a young man who worked repairing bicycles and helping his adoptive family run a small shop. People described him as hardworking, quiet, and kind-hearted. They said he had arrived as a child with no clear past. When Armin first saw him from a distance, time seemed to stop. The young man's posture, the shape of his face, even the way he tilted his head while concentrating on fixing a wheel, something felt painfully familiar. Armin's chest tightened with emotions he had kept locked away for decades. But 20 years can change everything. A child becomes a stranger with a different life, different memories, and a story shaped by survival. Armin did not rush forward. Instead, investigators carefully confirmed details through records and a DNA test arranged quietly to avoid chaos. Those days of waiting felt longer than the entire 20 years before them. And then, the truth arrived. The young man was indeed Zion. The moment Armin learned this, he did not celebrate loudly or cry dramatically the way movies often show. Instead, he sat silently, tears falling slowly as if his heart had finally allowed itself to breathe again after being underwater for 2 decades. The search that many believed was impossible had finally reached its end. Meeting his son again was not a simple reunion filled with instant recognition. Life had shaped them both in different ways. Zion had grown up believing he had been abandoned and later rescued by kind people who raised him with modest means. Armin had spent years chasing a memory of a little boy frozen in time. When they finally stood near each other, there was hesitation, curiosity, and an emotional distance created by years that could never be returned. But something deeper than memory connected them. As days passed, they began to learn about each other slowly. Armin shared the story of the long search, the sleepless nights, the foundation he built to help others. Zion listened with quiet disbelief, realizing that someone had been searching for him all this time with a love strong enough to cross decades. Before the story reaches its final moments, here's a special request. Write in the comments where you're watching from and whether you believe a parent's love can truly last forever. Your messages help keep stories like this alive. Gradually, father and son began rebuilding what had been stolen from them. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly. Armin never tried to replace the life Zion had lived. Instead, he respected the people who had cared for him and welcomed them with gratitude. What mattered most was that hope had survived long enough to bring them back into the same world again. The mansion that once echoed with loneliness finally felt different. Not because everything returned to the way it used to be, but because the emptiness was no longer permanent. The toy car on the shelf was still there, but now it was a symbol of a journey rather than a memory of loss. Armin's story spread quietly across many communities, inspiring families who were still searching for their own missing loved ones. His foundation grew stronger, helping countless children reunite with parents who had almost given up. People often asked him what kept him going for 20 years when the world had stopped believing. The answer was simple. Love does not measure time the same way the world does. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to Lonely Dad's Strong Heart. Your support keeps these powerful stories reaching people who need them the most.